John, thanks for joining us for another edition of the CEO's blog. Yesterday, you're at Tabcorp Park Menangle, where Harness Racing New South Wales helped call together a WIPS convention. Tell us a little bit about that.
Of course, Amanda, this follows on from the decision by the Board of Harness Racing New South Wales not to proceed with the removal of WIPs from racing. So what we had, we still have to work through a process. We have an image to protect, and that image is that we don't want the wider community thinking that there's anything wrong with what occurs in a race, and there's no equine and welfare issues. So we called a convention. The convention was very well attended. There were two sessions, a morning session and an afternoon session.
Okay, can you tell us a bit about who attended this meeting?
Well, in the morning session, every state was represented. They were represented in two parts. There were administrators, there were stewards, and in the other part, of course, there were the drivers and the trainer representatives. This was a very positive gathering. The atmosphere in the room was one about taking the industry forward, looking from both sides being that the drivers believe that they need to retain the whip in racings for a number of reasons, safety for one, another for punter confidence, and from the administration side, from the fact that we need to protect that image and how we're accepted in the wider audience of today's society.
Okay, so what were some of the outcomes?
Well, the outcomes I can't exactly tell you because they're a work in progress, but what I can tell you was extremely positive, and there is a very, very good resolution which will come out of it. There'll be more consultation in the case of rules and penalties. They must be accepted by all, and they must be fair to all. So that's a work in progress, and it wouldn't be right to reveal exactly what was stated because we may not end there.
All right. So that was the morning session, John. What else happened in the afternoon session?
The afternoon session, we drew a good number, about 50 drivers and others attended. And we just took vision of what their action was and how that action needs to be explained with what we're calling a wrist-only action. Now, wrist-only action, I could make some demonstrations here now, but I'm certainly not a driver, never was probably. But the point is, trainers have different actions. We certainly want to remove away, and drivers have different actions, of course. We certainly want to move away from what is not acceptable, and that's what we call a wrist-only action. But a wrist-only action is something that we will work on. It was interesting, something like 25 drivers of all sizes, both genders, and capabilities, hopped in the cart and showed us what their action was as it currently is, and also tried to show us what their action might be if we said wrist-only action. And it's interesting. They're all different. We will take those away. We'll analyse them. We'll cut them down. We'll review them. And next Wednesday we have a meeting with the UHRA here at Tabcorp Park Menangle, and we'll look at that vision and we'll review that vision and we'll see what we can do to make sure that we've all got a clear understanding of what this action, whatever it may be eventually, is, so that there's consistency with the drivers applying the whip, and the whip is not applied in a cruel manner. It's applied to urge a horse to the line, but also so the stewards, and most importantly the stewards, consistently apply the rules right the way through to the driver here in New South Wales in Broken Hill or at Tabcorp Park Menangle. So the process has a little way to run. We do have a date of September 1, but if September 1 comes and we haven't reached that final point, well, then we will just keep moving on until we get it right. But there'll be no half-hearted, there'll be no haste. It'll be fully consulted with the industry. And what was good was that we had representatives from interstate, and I must compliment our own in Darren McCall and Josh Turnbull and Wally Mann, but I also must compliment Greg Sugars and Steve Warren from Victoria. Barry Rattray came over from Tasmania, so we had a good representation there from that side, and from the north, Pete McMullen was there. So we had the right people in the room. And then we certainly had those same people down there in the stable area at Tabcorp Park Menangle, where we took the vision of what we're going to do eventually when we get to the end result. And that'll be a very compliant action that drivers can can appreciate and can take forward.
So will that start in New South Wales first, or is this a national, nationwide change with the wrist-only action?
Well, it certainly will happen in New South Wales. We're wanting to have this as a national approach. We don't want people coming and racing at Albury and needing to leave their whip across the border in Victoria, and likewise if they come down to Tasmania, from Tamworth rather, I'm in the wrong place there, but from Tamworth, if the Wiedemann girls come down, they don't need to leave their whips at the border there either. And of course, all the best racing in Australia, all the best racing in New Zealand is conducted at, as well as Australia, is conducted at Tabcorp Park Menangle. So when we get those drivers here, we want to make sure they know what they've got to do. So it needs to be a national. And when I say national, it probably needs to be an international approach when we've got New Zealand included as well.
Okay, well, there'll certainly be plenty of drivers from all over the state at Tabcorp Park Menangle this Saturday night. We've got the Group 2 Breeders' Challenge Blue Finals.
Yeah, and these are great races. These races were introduced 3 years ago, and they've certainly grown in time. And you're right, the drivers seem to come from all over the state. These are for horses that are bred by stallions who are standing in New South Wales, and the way this is growing, there could be an expansion of this series, of course. As we've seen with the regional finals, they'll be at Bathurst at the end of the month, but what trainers and owners and drivers, everybody should be aware of, we've made announcements last year that there is a change to the Breeders' Regional, Alabar Breeders' Regional Finals, in that for the 3 and 4 year olds, there will be, if sufficient nominations are received, there will be semi-finals. Now, the nominations close earlier than normal, so trainers should be fully aware. We will send out, of course, text messages to trainers that they need to meet those deadlines, but we will run semi-finals if the nominations are received in the first place. There will be no extension of nominations in that case.
Okay, so the regional finals at Bathurst are on July 30, and the semi-finals are on the Wednesday prior to that.
Yes, that's right. And as I said, only for 3 and 4 year olds. So we're 2 year olds are a different matter altogether. We've got our own observations of 2 year olds, and we don't wish to over race those. So they've had their opportunities as much as these other horses, but we reserve them. We want them to be the good 3 and 4 year olds and 5 and 6 year olds as we go forward with our great sport.
Okay, John, well, there's been a few changes here at Harness Racing New South Wales of late, including a new chairman of stewards.
Yeah, and it's my great pleasure to officially announce that Grant Adams will step up to the role of chairman of stewards. Grant's been in this industry a long time. He has a long history. His family has a very good history in the sport. So Grant will be our chief steward. Chris Paul becomes the deputy chief steward, of course, and we'll keep in place Graham Locke for some time as he helps mentor our whole team. There are other vacancies created by Grant's lift up into the chief steward's job, and we have to fill those as well. So it's congratulations to Grant. Well done. He's a good steward. He's going to be one of the best stewards in Australasia going forward in the years to come.
All right, we'll look forward to it. Well, thank you for your time again, John, and I guess we'll catch up next time.
My pleasure.